Artemis, Diana, Diane. She has many names. The goddess Artemis comes from ancient Greece. She is known as the goddess of the hunt, the moon, wild animals, and fertility. Then, like all good Romans, they took Artemis for their own by renaming her Diana, or Diane in the French. I cannot believe people still struggle with the French. Artemis is the daughter of the king of the gods and the titaness Leto. Her twin brother was Apollo. She spent her years being protector of her young brother, being free in the forest with a bow and an arrow in hand and vowing to never marry. It would seem I've always had a connection with the goddess, not just because our names are so similar, but the thing that sticks out the most to me is the fact that we're both archers. I was inspired by creating this costume by two things I had recently seen. The first was the fabric in a shop, and I had been longing for it, but I had no inspiration behind it. Then I sat down to watch the Dior Haute Couture Autumn Winter 2020-2021 short film, and oh my god. It was like nothing I had ever seen before for the fashion world. It was a beautiful display of their haute couture designs, especially during COVID. What a fantastic way to showcase fashion and still make it appealing for the audience. The use of nymphs, mermaids, goddesses, it was just so delicious. The draping of the fabric. Marie Grazia has done so much for Dior and created some of the most iconic moments for the brand. She was always pushing the boundaries of what fashion can do to inspire. She is also creating wonderful characters during the short film. And that's when it clicked for me. My namesake. Wouldn't it be incredible to see her character and that fabric running through the forest? I love how people have portrayed her in art, especially in the 18th and 19th century, with a strong woman draped in rich fabrics, a crescent moon resting on her head, and then a quivering bow to boot. She is stylized so beautifully with golden leaves, stars behind her, and her companion deer astride of her. I find it also beautiful how people are still inspired by her to this day through the practice of magic and with this most stunning photography. So, I set to work researching costume fashion from ancient Greece and Roman cultures to merge the two together to unite the looks. I was going to stick to a basic dress because I wanted to have that classic look. With classical Greece, you think of loose fitting and drapery that is so flowy. The tunic, the woman's, was called a peplos. The woman's tunic was called a peplos. Then they were created by using two large rectangle pieces of fabric joined together by the shoulders, which was my favorite look, then being held together with a little bead or a clasp, and then the fabric was joined at the sides and then gathered at the waist. Some of the garments were so simple, but some also had decorative borders. The draping was really the key, with the use of the linens and wools, and not to forget the motifs and the decorative embroidery all over the garment, depending on your rank. The Romans followed suit by creating something similar that we now know as a toga, but for women it was called a stola. It was draped from the shoulders and fastened with brooches. It created its shape by the drape, that it would be draped around the bust and the waist, and then it had a use of a belt to tie it all together. The women also wore a shawl that was known as a palla that would cover their heads. There was a lot more colours used in Roman fashion, with the use of madder, saffron and indigo dyes. Of course, you will see this fashion period come back in the manner of the Regency period, where they took inspiration from the classics to create the empire look, especially with the draping of the linens and the cottons, and the way the bust line and even the bonnets were, that were very similar to Roman and Greek statues. Of course, her hair needed to be wavy and wild as she whipped through the forest. I also had to somehow put gold leaf or a moon into her hair, as it had always been a goal for me to have that fantastic moon crescent around my head. I also want to shout out the stunning costumes from Troy, as the women are so beautifully created. It really opened the world of ancient Greece to a modern audience with the most stunning costumes. So, we have Dior re-inspiring us with ancient couture. We also have Dolce & Gabbana's Ultra Mode 2019, recreating the goddesses that are at Mount Olympus with the use of lush gold fabrics, painted silks and so much decor, you actually think you're up there amongst the gods. So, let's get to creating this garment. You need at least 2 meters of this pleated fabric and 1/2 meter of cotton drill. Now, using my mood board, I got to designing the costume, which was amazing to have a pen and paper in my hand again. It was so important for me to try and create her via paper. And clearly, I needed to add my Mongolian horse bow into the design because 100% I was going to take the bow with me. I loved this picture of Briseis and Helena, so I really wanted to create the neckline and shoulders similar. And through my bead collection, I found some beads that were perfect to showcase the shoulders being held together. And not to forget, we needed to drape some fabric around the shoulders. I also wanted to create a waistline that held the bust to recreate this ancient look and also bring in the waist and showcase the curves and the draping of the fabric. By chance, I had some watercolors that were in the correct tone, so I really got to paint in those pleats just like the fabric. I wanted to make sure the hem of the dress was longer than it needed to be to give it the sense of floating like a goddess. I was going to recreate my own pattern. I knew that the main part of the dress was easy. I just had to cut 2 long rectangles from under my bust and then to pass my toes. I also needed to give it wide enough to have the drape and then to hide my hips. But for the bodice, I wanted to give it shape to fit my bust. So I went looking for a basic pattern through my stock of patterns, and then by using this pattern, I set to work using it as the base. This fabric, honestly, the light doesn't do it justice, but it's so beautiful. It looks like the forest and water. It has all aspects of nature. All right, let's get to chopping. So what I've done, I've kind of like measured where it needs to go to under the bust with enough hem so I don't have to actually cut that, and how wide the whole like across my body it's going to be. To cut this, I used my eye. As there are so many lines, it's hard not to follow the grain. And with that, the simplest dress had been cut. By using this ancient McCall's pattern, we're going to use only the bust shapes, as there is a bust line located on this pattern, so I knew where to stop. By using this leftover cotton drill I had, it was going to be the base of the bottom piece, which would support the fabric so it didn't sag and would hold the structure. I also like the fabrics to sit against me to give me the support that I needed without the use of a bra. Now it is time to sew all those panels together. Overlock the edges once all the panels are sewn together. I also overlocked the top and the bottom of the bodice to seal the piece together. Don't forget to press all those seams for a nice crisp line. Okay, it is now time to attach the top fabric to the bodice. Make sure you place the fabric about 5 centimeters above the bust line so we can use it for the shoulder straps later on, and then it will create the illusion of one piece. I lay the fabric atop of it and began to pin down along the line of the top edge. So I made sure I did it loosely, as we didn't want it to be so tight because we wanted to create that illusion of drapery. Now it is time to top stitch the fabrics together. Once I sewn the fabric, I cut the fabric down, leaving enough fabric, around 2.5 centimeters, so you can roll over the seams later on and hide the edge and the base of the bodice. And make sure you leave that fabric atop for the shoulder seam later on. Time to hand sew that top seam down with a teeny tiny whip stitch. So what I've done is that I've like just laid it over a little bit and just pinned it down, so we have like an organic fold to make it very Grecian. But I didn't want to do too much, I just want to do a little bit so it can like flow in the wind as well. It's looking good. I'm glad I did this as a base. Now you've pinned the top fabric to the bottom of the bodice so you can get that drape you want, and you sew it down and then cut the extra fabric off. Sleeves. I made this as simple as possible. I cut 2 long rectangles, which I actually ended up cutting down a little bit, but the idea was to let it flow and have a cheeky shoulder moment. And when it came to sewing down the sleeves, I hadn't sewn the armholes up yet. So what I did is I machine sewed the fabric down where I felt that it would drape best. So around here on either side of the armhole, I made sure I didn't sew here and here. And then once I've sewn those places, we turn it in and then we hand stitch it down again with a teeny tiny whip stitch. Oh, I should say, we're going to leave the back of the bodice open because that's where we're going to fasten it. I did it with hooks and eyes because I wanted to make it as simple as possible and easy for me to dress myself. but you can do it on the side or you can use a zipper. The choice is really yours. Now, onto the dress part. It really was simple to sew. Straight lines down the seams. Once I had done this, I was going to connect it to the bodice. Now, because the dress was so much baggier, we needed to mark the front seams and the back seams as well as the side seams, so you could ease the fabric into the bodice to make it sit flush but still have that loose movement. And then you need to sew this on the inside to attach, and then also overlock it. So it was time to make the belt. I did make a leather one, but it didn't work so great for the whole look that I was going for, but I was always going to make a belt with the same fabric of the dress. I left enough when cutting, so I would have strips that I could weave, spin, plait, whatever it worked for you to create that organic look. And then we were going to do the same vibe for the shoulders. You're now going to get 2 strips of that fabric that you've cut, and you're going to do a knot together and pin them to a strong surface and then twist them. This will take time and patience. You need to make sure it's strong and tight and doesn't spin out of place, which happened once or twice. Repeat this so you get the length that you want, and then it's so you can wrap it around your body. So there you have it. A very simple costume to give you that ancient Greek Roman goddess look that you want, but with a little bit of a modern twist. So I hope you've liked this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up because it really does support my channel. And also, if you like this way I filmed and edited it to make it more cinematic, so we get to be very transported into a different world. So I would love to know below if you enjoy this and we should do more things like this. And also subscribe for more content like this. And also, while you're at it, check out my Instagram because the photos are so lush there at the moment. So let's roll out to the credits and check out Artemis running free.